to a show.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Off the Mats podcast. And this week on the podcast, we're going to have a returning guest here. So I sat with this guest previously, not too long ago, but after hearing his brutal hockey injury story, I was like, oh, I got to have this guy back on. Plus, he's got a lot going on here. So we're going to welcome back to the show, Mr. Matt Guffey. Matt, what's going on, man? How you feeling?
Not much. I'm feeling great. Thanks for having me again.
No, thank you. Thank you for making the time to do this. And also, I'll admit here on air, I messed up my scheduling and timing. So thank you for being patient with me as I crammed food down my face. And I was
all
like,
good, man. All good.
Let me get back to recording. So I think right out the gate, let's just jump right into it here. With the new set that you got up and everything, just kind of walk me through, I guess, how it came about as far as, everything's progressing and you got big moves going on here. So I guess walk me through and let me know, how we get to this point today.
Yeah. So, our mission is to change the way grapplers approach strength training. And, we're trying to reach jiu-jitsu athletes through as many avenues as possible. Podcasts like yours are a great way to do it. But the other thing we wanted to do is build a program that was easily accessible. And so we approached the BJJ Fanatics has a fitness subsidiary called Strong and Fit. If you go to either strongandfit.com or bjjfanatics.com, you can find our ebook. So I reached out to them and I asked them about writing a program that they would sell in their store, and they liked the idea. And so, I sent them a draft. They liked the draft, and then we just kind of ran with it from there. So that's how the Move, Feel, Perform Better ebook came to be.
Okay. All right. Cool. When I was, flipping through, just as I go through Instagram, however the algorithm's set up, we've already been in contact, so they're going to feed your post to me, like kind of at the top. So as I'm scrolling, I was just kind of looking, and it took a second for it even to click in my head. And I was like, I think, oh yeah, okay, all right. And, the way that BJJ Wiki's set up, immediately I was like, I got to repost this. I got to, put the word out there, let people know where you're at with everything right now. With this upstart of it, do you feel like, okay, now that we got this ball rolling, I know it's early, but are you looking forward to like maybe an ideal, like, okay, we've got, I put so much here, I got more to add, I got other chapters that I want to, put out there to follow up on this?
Yeah. I mean, our goal eventually would be to build a program for BJJ Fanatics, build like an instructional, so to speak, something that grapplers can, see and feel and use, more so than the ebook. This is kind of our first foray into writing stuff for that platform. But eventually the goal would be to build an instructional, like ones that you see, on the BJJ Fanatics Instagram, alongside guys like Gordon Ryan and Craig Jones and all the guys who are putting out a lot of that content. I think eventually, we can make it to that level. And the way to do it, in my opinion, is just through that consistent effort, right? Like the Grand Canyon, you just gotta be, it's like that one stream just over and over and over down that one path. And eventually, you build this, this huge thing. So this is just our the first entry into that domain. But I have a feeling there'll be a lot more to come as the years pass.
Good, good. And it's got to be crazy just to think, you're kind of moving in that direction, like you said, kind of be along the wall with, the Gordon Ryans, Craig Jones, Tom DeVos, the names that we see up there on Fanatics already. And then, with the ebook right now, that's just a stepping stone to get you there to the next move. Uh, as you were working on this project, how long did it take you to, I guess, from start to finish, I guess, once you found out, like, hey, we're going to make this happen? How long did, that take you to get it materialized?
I'm the kind of guy that once I latch onto something, I can't stop until it's done. So, writing the program took me, maybe a couple of days. And then filming was the longest piece, I guess, from a total time commitment standpoint. But I went into the gym and I just cranked out every video on there back to back to back to back to back. I woke up the next day and I was like, oh, I'm so sore because I had filmed so many exercises, which probably wasn't the best way to do it for me physically. But mentally, it was nice to get past that and to get that out of the way quickly. And then once all that's done, I mean, I had to write like a short thing for each phase of the program, just explanations, notes, things that, somebody going through the ebook might need to know, certain details that, unless you're there with me, you wouldn't get. So I had to, really think through, okay, like somebody seeing this for the first time, what are they going to see and feel and think? And so that took a few days to really suss all of that out. And then after that, I just sent everything over to Strong and Fit, and they send it through their editorial process. They go through and, put all the bells and whistles on it and make it look good, and, give it that classic BJJ Fanatics feel on that cover, which is really cool. That was a special moment for me when I saw that for the first time. I was like, wow, that's that's cool. Like we all know what that looks like, with all the same font and all the pictures and everything. And I was like, yeah, man, it just like blew my mind to see it, to see that come to fruition. So, all things considered, about a month and a half, so 4 to 6 weeks from start to finish.
It's funny to think, like, as you say, kind of the time window there. I'm thinking like, damn, man, in my mind, I'm kind of similar in, like, I latch on to things and I can't not think about it. It's like, you got it. It's like, this is the plan. This is a project. But then also in my mind too is like, man, this must have been like, he must have started this like after we finished recording, because like, for me, it's like, oh, that's a 2 month, 2.5 month project in my mind. But also for you, this is like your field of expertise. So it makes sense.
Yeah, it is. It's 3 phases. It's a 12-week program. So there's a lot of content in there, and you don't necessarily have to be a jiu-jitsu athlete to do it. Anybody can do it and anybody can benefit from it. But obviously, like, my heart lies with, the grappling athlete.
Actually, as I'm pulling it up here, I've been going through a bit of a, I guess, imagining of my grappling life right now, trying to get everything back on track. And then seeing this is like, you know what? This might be something that's right up my alley for sure. And also, when I see any kind of content or, announcements for seminars and stuff like that, it's like, okay, I know they've got kind of a system. They've got something that's battle tested, and it works. And then even just looking at this right here, I'm like, you know what? Like, not just out of the idea of support, but also the idea of like, this might actually jumpstart me to where I need to get back to.
I love to hear that, man. That's awesome.
Like, I went back after I had a groin injury a while back, thought I was better, was not better because groins are tricky. And now I feel better. I'm back out there. But then just this past week on the mats, I felt like, oh my God, this. I turned to my coach. I was like, man, I feel like, I'm back to day one. Everything is gone. I lost all my mojo. Did I wash my belt? What's going on here? I'm losing my powers. But just looking at everything here was like, dude, it's like the way that it looks like it's set up. It's like it seems like, like the whole for dummies program. It's like it looks like straightforward and simple. It's not anything that's over complex.
Yeah, it's foolproof. It's not too complex. One of the major tenets that we live by is variation without change. So for instance, from one phase to the next, over the course of several phases, could be months, could be years, right? The movement pattern itself might not change, from one phase to the next, but where we position the load, whether it's like in the goblet position right in front, or if it's in the suitcase position by your side, or if it's 2 dumbbells, instead of 1, or it could be the front rack position, or it could be any number of things, right? Those are all ways that we can vary the exercise without having to change it completely, which makes moving from one phase to the next really, really simple. So like you said, anybody can get it. It doesn't mean we have to reteach a whole new phase, right? Because from when we move from phase 1 to phase 2, we can just say, okay, you remember the goblet split squat from phase 1. Now it's a 2 dumbbell split squat. So the pattern is the same. We're just changing the implement, right? Or the load position. So that's what makes it so simple and so intuitive, I think, is that it's not a new thing every single time, but it's just new enough to still be interesting, right? And keep things fresh and continue, to help people continue to adapt, right? And to make gains.
I think that's something for someone like myself, especially, that's comforting to hear, because I can't tell you how many times, I'm just on YouTube or something, or even, growing up doing my own, program, and things get so complex. You do a lot of like, okay, you're doing exercises that aren't complementing each other. You're doing exercises that's like you go from, you're going from, pull-ups to squats. Is like, or you're just doing things that are completely all over the place. So I like that, again, you're keeping the movement simple. You're keeping them, in line where, it's not intimidating. And actually, as we're here, I'm ordering right now.
Go ahead. Well, I appreciate the support, and I can't wait to hear how you feel after you've done it. That's something, just to touch on what you just said, it's something that I've realized the longer I've done this, the most effective programs are in essence the simplest ones, right? It's the fundamentals executed ruthlessly well. And, it's not much different than jujitsu, right? You don't see many helicopter arm bars, right? That's fancy and that's fun to watch on Instagram, but what are the most common, the most common submissions at Worlds were, chokes from the back, arm bars. Mm-hmm. It's very simple. It's all fundamental. It's not, I won't say it's easy, but it is simple. And, I found that the more simple, the more I commit to making programs simple, the better results people see, myself included.
I always feel like when you're younger, or at least when I was younger, again, the ideal felt like it always had to be complex. It always had to be, like you said, the fancy moves in competition, they're fun to see. How practical are they? Like, right. What's the percentage on, the effectiveness of it? I mean, you look at Hodrick Gracie, he's still using just collar chokes,
Yep.
on black belts, and
Yep.
that's a move you learn at white belt. So
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
and that's just how I think as I'm older now, especially I'm 45. So if I see something that's simple, sign me up. Like,
Yep.
it's not even about being lazy. It's about, again, thinking about the effectiveness of the routine, and also, just your day too. It's like, look, I don't want to be jumping from one thing to another and all these crazy big movements. So I like the sounds of it.
Yeah. And then, for those who do practice jujitsu often, the beauty of, or one of the, um, well, the beauty of the program is that it's built so that it doesn't take away from the things that you love, whether that's jujitsu or walking your dog or going for hikes or whatever it is. We've condensed everything into a 2-day program. It doesn't have to be 5 days a week to make gains. Most of our athletes at our gym are jujitsu athletes, and they train 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. And so taking time away from the mats it cannot happen, right? It's a non-negotiable for them. And if it meant spending less time on the mats, they wouldn't join our program. They wouldn't come train with us. And so we had to find a way to make things short and sweet, but very, very effective. And so we've, put things in order so that you can get a lot done in a very short amount of time, which is really nice.
Good. For you doing this, as you're going through the processes, did you run into anything where you felt like, did you ever run into like almost kind of a roadblock of any sort, as you're trying to, put the program together? Did you get like too excited at any point and you're like, oh my God, I'm doing too much here? Or you had it like kind of ironed out?
Nah, I got it ironed out at this point. I think it's, at this point, we've worked with hundreds of grapplers, from all levels, white to black belts, all different levels of intensity and commitment, from the hobbyist to the lifestylist to the full-blown competitor. So we've got I think our system is pretty well structured and, like you said, battle tested. So it was really, for me, it was another day in the office. Just build a program for people who, have something that they really enjoy, that they don't want to stop doing, that needs, some kind of strength training component to it. And then we went from there.
So even though, you kind of have this all locked down, like you said, it's just another day in the office. Were there any, challenges besides the physical, aspect to it that you encounter, just like, or do you foresee anything that might be a challenge, as you're, looking to make more programs moving forward?
I don't know if it's necessarily a challenge, but something that keeps us on our toes is we're constantly looking to refine. We're not, I said it was another day in the office, but that doesn't mean I just mailed it in. We are constantly looking for something to add or subtract from the way we do things to make things better for the people that we serve. So if I had to answer that, I said the biggest challenge is just finding the next thing. And we rigorously go through our exercise menu regularly and say, okay, like, does this belong still? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Keep it. No. Why doesn't it belong? Right. What is the limiting factor here? Why do we need to get rid of it? And if we're going to get rid of it, what are we going to put in its place? Are we going to put anything in its place? So these are the questions that kind of keep us up at night, is like, what is the very best way to be doing this thing? We can only go on, the research, the practical side of things, right? There are thought leaders in the space that we follow really closely and say, okay, like, these people are on the cutting edge of what it is that we're doing, the strength training portion of things. And so we're constantly trying to dissect and filter all of that information into a system that best suits our people. So to answer your question, that's probably the biggest challenge, is just making sure we're making the right decisions as far as what we add or subtract from the program or from the philosophy.
So as it all stands right now with your training and just, work as well, as this is work, how's everything going for you on the mats as far as like, competing and just getting your reps in?
Yeah. I mean, overall pretty well. I don't have much to complain about. Training pretty much every day. I'm nursing a knee injury right now. I tweaked it at American Nationals in the absolute. Kind of a freak thing. Just guy went for a toe hold and I felt a pop in my knee. And so I tapped there. I want to train on Monday. So I was like, it's not Worlds. It's not a medal round. I think I'll just stop my run right now. But I got third in my weight class. So that was nice. I feel like I feel, that was my 10th competition at brown belt since I got promoted in December. So I've been competing a lot, and I'm feeling the benefits of that, right? Like who I am on the mats now is not the same person that I was 6-7 months ago. So that's pretty cool, because there are things that I'm doing, or the way I'm seeing the game, that have just changed as a result of that. So other than the knee injury, which is getting better, I'm still on the mats, I'm still drilling, I'm still able to do things. I just know I got to take it a little easy, while I rehab it off the mats. So yeah, no complaints, man. I'm having fun. It's a blast.
Good. In your, as people come into you, do you ever run into anyone who, like you said, they caught you in the toe hold, you felt the pop, and you're like, let me go ahead and, just, live to fight another battle? Do you ever encounter just people in training, that you train, that they come in with like kind of maybe a pre-existing injury, and they're trying to work through it, and you're like, hey man, like maybe this isn't the right thing to do, and they still keep, do you have anyone that's hard-headed, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, we see people, pretty much every jiu-jitsu athlete who comes to us has some sort of pre-existing injury. I had a strategy session with one today, and we go through our intake form, and on there is talk to us about previous injuries, and that part of the conversation is always the longest. We typically see it's a litany of of injuries sustained, several of which are jiu-jitsu related. But I won't say they're hard-headed. If people are coming to us, they're looking for help, and they're open to the idea of changing the way they do things. And so that's, I think that is, it's a direct reflection of how we are, right? Like as a company, we're always looking for, like we talked about, we're looking for new and better ways to do things. And so the people who come to us are generally in that same mindset.
Okay. So no one's trying to downplay the injury, like, there's a click in my shoulder, but it's no big deal.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, okay, I should say people are athletes. We're all, I'm an athlete. I get it. There are times where I'm like, it's fine, and as I've gotten older, and as I've, spent more time in the field of strength and conditioning, I've learned not to do that. And so now I'm helping teach other people to listen to their bodies and, take care of themselves. And if it means taking a day off, or even just going easy on one day, sometimes people come in and they're like, I got this and that and this and that. And I'm like, okay, let's just see what we can do. And if it's only a couple things, it's only a couple things. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. movement is medicine. So if you're moving as much as we can move without you feeling pain, the better. Like that's gonna, that's gonna promote really good blood flow, and it's gonna get nutrients to the injured site, and it's good for your mental health just to move. And so, yes, people can be athletes in that way where they're, trying to like tough it out. But at this point, we've gotten pretty good at figuring out when people are doing that. And we just slow down. We're like, all right, hey, I got the feeling you're trying to be a warrior here. And it's okay at times. But right now, let's just focus on getting you through this lift and making sure that you leave here feeling better and not worse. And, I think people are really receptive to that and have bought into the idea that, just because you didn't do every single thing on the program today doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It just means, your body's trying to tell you something, listen to it, and then come back next week and let's try it again. And we'll just keep going from there. And so that happened just a couple weeks ago. Somebody, they deadlifted 1,000 times with us, never felt anything. Came in, tried to deadlift, felt something on the back of their shoulder. They're like, it doesn't feel right. Like, okay, let's cut it. We'll cut it today. Do everything else, do everything that we can. And he came back yesterday and set a record, on the deadlift in that particular, lift. So it's all about living to fight another day. And I think we're doing a good job of teaching our people that.
I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, they're coming to you. You are the professional. So say, look, man, settle down. Just, live to fight another day. I could have used that probably about a month and a half ago myself. I was just like, I'll be okay. Go ahead. Deep app's not a problem for. Uh-oh. It is a problem.
But. Yeah. I mean, we all, I need it too sometimes. I sometimes I need somebody to be like, hey man, like, are you okay? Like, it's okay if you do a little bit less. I was in physical therapy for my own stuff, and my coach there was like, we were talking about strategies to, improve mobility in my hip. But I was feeling some pain when I did some things. And she was like, well, what if you, instead of doing it 100%, could you do it at like 50%? And I was like, yes. And I dropped my head. I'm like, that's what I would have said, like that's why didn't I think of that? So, even me, somebody who teaches people to do that, sometimes needs somebody to help them in that realm. So you're not alone.
True. It's good to hear. At least it's like, look, this is the instructor who also needs those reminders, because like you said, we're all athletes out here just trying to, and there are those moments where you're like, no, I know my body, I'll be okay. And until your body says, I got something new to tell you.
Right. Yeah. And, I think there's a conversation to be had there just regarding pain in general. Pain itself is not a bad thing. Like, pain's an important defense mechanism, right? If we didn't have pain, if you put your hand on a burning stove, you'd burn your hand right off, And so you need pain, and it sucks. It's not fun, but it is just a message. It is just your body trying to tell you something. And so I think it helps that we're trying to teach people how to, how to have that conversation with themselves, and how to assess the pain that they're feeling, and then work backwards and say, okay, like, you're feeling pain here. This is something that we can do to help mitigate that and help get you back to where you were before.
I know we talked last time about the hockey injury with the puck. I told my grandma that story, then I let her listen to it because I couldn't. I was like, look, because I was trying to convince her to be on the podcast. We kept like pushing it back. I was like, okay, look, grandma, this is what the podcast is like. And then she was like, oh, okay, sounds fun. And then I was like, here, let me tell you this other story. And I was like, no, let me just let you hear this story. And she was like, oh, wow, okay. Well, I don't have any stories like that. But I was like, Grandma, it's like just I just wanted you to hear it because it was still fresh for me. Um, but on the mats for you, what was you know the worst injury that you've had to deal with on the mats?
Um, the worst injury that I've had to deal with that kept me off the mats the longest um, was, and I should preface this by saying, I think I was predisposed to, um, an injury like this because of my history in hockey, not because of jujitsu. I think my body was well worn down prior to me starting this. I had a lot of miles on my frame, and so I tore my. I think I did. I don't. I never got imaging on it, but I felt a pop, heard a pop. I had one of my training partners. He's the athletic trainer for U.S. wrestling, so he was in Tokyo at the Olympics and all that stuff. So I had him take a look at it, and we went through it. And so he thinks, and I tend to agree, that I tore my labrum in my right shoulder, and that kept me off the mats for a couple of months. I did my best. I would just go to class and just watch, sit there and take notes and just soak it in. I'm sure we've all been there, right? I drilled for a long time. It took a long time for my shoulder to get back. So I went through, physical therapy and all the stuff for it. And, now it's fine. And I should, just to be clear, most people have some sort of labral fraying or tearing, especially athletes. Hockey is considered an overhead sport. While you're not actually raising your arm overhead like this, like a baseball player would, this like externally rotated position in the shoulder is exactly what it looks like when you shoot. And so that's why it's considered an overhead sport. So most people who have played or do play an overhead sport experience some type of labral fraying in one or both shoulders. I think it's something like 75% of people, like over the age of 30, have something. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It doesn't necessarily mean that they all present with pain. Some do, some don't. And the margin is very, very slim for who presents with pain and who does not. Some people may have a completely torn labrum and experience no pain at all, outside of the acute pain that comes with tearing the labrum. But like long term, they may not present with pain. Others may have just very minor fraying and present with, great deals of pain. Just depends on a lot of things. Depends on where the ball is in the socket and all that stuff. So, anyways, that was the worst injury that I've experienced personally, but I don't think it was as a result of jiu-jitsu. I think it was a result of my history with hockey and how long I had played. And you think about every summer from probably the age of 12 to 22 or 23, I probably shot just in the summers 10,000 pucks. And so you're looking at, across the course of the seasons, and not, then including all the summers, probably hundreds of thousands of times in one direction versus the other. And so my shoulder's just seen a lot. It's just, like I said, it's got a lot of miles on it. And I remember, I'll never forget the moment, because we were just drilling, and I reached to try to sink in the rear naked choke. And as soon as I reached forward, I felt and heard the pop, and I was like, oh, ow. And that was it for me, for a couple months. So that's the worst one that I've encountered myself.
I mean, it makes sense, when you frame it that way, especially just all the years of hockey, eventually, something was going to, kind of that wear and tear over the years was going to, present itself somewhere.
Yeah. The people, I think a lot of it would benefit people to think of their bodies. I mean, they're mechanical parts. They're no different than parts in a car, right? You only have X number of cycles before the belt breaks, or something comes apart before you need new brakes, before you need, like, they're just mechanical parts. At the end of the day, that's what it is. And so our bodies are the same. So it's really, want to try to avoid, well, I'll put it this way. One of my coaches, when I was going through a certification course, a mobility course at the UFCPI in Vegas, and one of the things he said to me was, the cost of getting good at anything, sports especially, but the cost of getting good at anything is getting worse at human, right? Because the more we go down this path, we're like, okay, we're only doing this one thing. So for me, it was hockey, right? I'm shooting tens of thousands of pucks every summer and putting myself in the same position over and over and over, and just turning my shoulder over and over and over, right? The cost of that was my shoulder is not going to do the things a normal human shoulder does. So for instance, like, I can't rotate in very well on this side, but on this side I can, right? So, and that's just a physiological adaptation that my body underwent. It was like, okay, he needs more this way. And it just kept giving me, I kept reinforcing that groove. And so that's changed. My shoulders will never be the same again. Am I upset about that? No, it's just a reality, right? It's something that we all go through. The same could be said about sitting, right? Like, a lot of people have desk jobs now. The cost of getting good at any desk job will take engineering. Like, I'm here in Silicon Valley, right? So people sit and they code for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. So the cost of getting good at coding is getting worse at human, right? Because they get stuck in this position. You see a lot of people with their shoulders slumped forward, really, really rounded backs. And so that's the price that we pay. Jiu-jitsu is unique in that there are so many variations of ways to do things that it doesn't predispose you as often to the same physiological adaptations that you might see in an overhead sport athlete, like a baseball player or a hockey player, or somebody that's doing the same exact thing over and over, right? Like, a pitcher throws his pitch, while the pitch might be different, but his delivery is nearly identical from pitch to pitch to pitch, and they're pitching, hundreds of baseballs a day over the course of 20 years. That's going to be a very specific adaptation. In jiu-jitsu, we're constantly going down different paths, right? And so it's not quite the same, which is why I love jiu-jitsu so much. Is I think there's that variability of movement, which is really, really important. So I know I just rambled like crazy right there. That was I was.
Yeah, it all made sense.
All right, cool.
I was actually able to follow. It was like, oh, no, I get where you're going. I think if there's anything, that we may suffer in jiu-jitsu, more so for gi, is our hands get mangled.
Yeah.
Just with grips. That might be the only thing I could think of that's relatively consistent. Unless you do no gi, then you're like, my hands look nice. Have you ever come across any, I guess, advice or any information that just seems like it's like they feel confident in what they're saying, but it's just so like far from accurate that you had to say like, hey, hold on, let me help you out here.
You're talking about people coming to me with advice, like saying, hey, this is how it is?
Not even necessarily that, but like just like, seeing anything on social media, like, someone jumping in the comments or something like that. Or even if they came to you.
There was one time, I wouldn't be able to tell you who the username was. He never responded to me, actually. I was recently on the Elbows Tight podcast, and one of the hot takes I gave was we don't back squat our athletes. So we don't have anybody do the back squat in our gym. And The reason that we don't is that the orthopedic cost is too high. It's just not worth it, right? We're talking about jiu-jitsu athletes who are pretty much constantly, compressing their spines and being put into weird positions. So adding external load to that just doesn't make any sense to me. That's not to say that the back squat in and of itself is wrong. It's fine if people want to back squat, but for us, it doesn't make as much sense, right? There are other ways. We have other safer ways to get the same exact adaptation, if not a better one. For instance, like just a single leg squat, and that's what we were talking about on the Elbows Tight podcast. And so Travis posted that hot take, and then somebody in the comments was like, this guy doesn't know anything. Back squats are the best for this and this and this. And it's like, okay, why? What do you mean? Like, you didn't listen to the thing. You just listened to the soundbite, and he kind of went off on me or whatever. And I had another guy that was like, what did he say? He just goes, "This is a shit take." I was like, why do you think so? And he never responded. And so, I mean, everybody's got their opinion. Our goal at the end of the day is just to keep our athletes safe. And so if I can get two people can get the same adaptation, and one person does a single leg squat with, a quarter of the weight, and the other person does a back squat with twice the weight, or, 4 times the weight as the guy with the single leg squat, I'm going to go with the single leg squat every time. It doesn't make any sense. It's safer. It transfers better to the sport. And like I said, the orthopedic costs, we just don't want to put any more stress on the spine than we already do in the sport that we play. So,
I actually never even considered that. Hearing it now, it makes total sense. I don't do back squats anyway, but just thinking, I was like, because I'll see teammates, they'll post on Instagram, and I'm looking like, oh, okay, cool, and now thinking, it's like, oh, that is a very good point. But it's also the internet, so everybody's always gonna. The internet is the world of the headline readers, so it's like you just see the one thing is like, I'm going to give a full blown opinion on that one little detail without hearing the rest of what had to be said. So,
yeah.
Would you say, I guess the single leg squat is, one of your favorite lower body exercises?
Absolutely. Yeah. I can't say enough about how important single leg strength is especially for jiu-jitsu athletes, but just athletes in general. If you think about it, we walk one leg at a time, we run one leg at a time. In jiu-jitsu, how many times are you standing there with your feet even and 50% of your weight on either foot? Probably never. Like if you are, you're about to get blast doubled, because it's like that's not a place you want to be. And so, building strength on one leg, or with a bias toward one leg versus the other, is really, really important. Not just for the orthopedic costs, like we just mentioned, but also for the transfer to sport, I think is much higher for single leg stuff. So whether it's a goblet split squat or reverse lunges, if it's a single leg deadlift or a single leg squat or any variation like that, anything that involves placing more weight on one side than you do on the other, whether that's 50-50 or 70-30 or 80-20, or all, pure single leg where all your weight is on one leg, no weight on the other leg, and you're moving through a full range of motion, I think is super, super important. We place a really high emphasis on it. Everybody sees something like that at least once per session. So that takes a really, really high priority in our in our training philosophy.
It's amazing, as last time I talked with you, and then this time it's like I always feel like I'm learning so much more. It's like, I didn't think of it this way, I didn't think of it that way. And now, as you're mentioning, just like double legs, takedowns, and just how we move is like, okay, like now I'm just thinking about my game. And I'm like, oh shit, Like after we get done here, I think I gotta go do some single leg squats.
Well, there are some in the Move Feel Perform Better ebook. So if you go through that, you'll see. And I promise you, single leg stuff will change your life. Not just on the mats, but everywhere else. You'll feel different. It really is. You know, if I had to say there was one really, really maybe universal line of feedback from all of our members is I never realized how important the single leg stuff was. I feel different in the way I move now that I am strong on one leg at a time. So it's really cool. I think you'll enjoy it.
Well, like I said, as you're talking in the beginning, I was like, here, let me go ahead and get this set up now. It's like heard the little chime. I was like, yep, got it. It's here. So I'm looking forward to digging into it. Also, I think my wife just got another iPad and she was going to get rid of the other one. I was like, just give it to me. Like that's how I read books. Meanwhile, I'm sitting on my phone just swiping and like trying to blow up pages. It's like, oh my god, like I'm so old. So
there you go, man. You got your iPad for your new ebook.
So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. So before we wrap up and get out of here, as you're talking about, the single leg squat and the importance of it, as far as any other body part, what would you say is, after that, what would you say is like a very important movement that maybe people aren't given enough attention to?
Yeah. So the short answer is that varies person to person, but the long answer is say what we call like anti-core training. And so I'll start by saying it's really, really common for people to crank out hundreds of sit-ups or crunches or Russian twists before or after class. That's like a really common thing that happens. That's if we think back to the car part analogy, right? You only have so many cycles on each one of those vertebrae. And if you're constantly flexing forward and pinching forward or twisting like this, right, which we're doing a lot in, we're doing that a lot in jiu-jitsu, right? When we're twisting or when we're kind of crunching and holding ourselves forward, like we already get a lot of those cycles. And so doing hundreds of those reps afterwards is probably not as helpful as people think. So that's the first thing. The second is when we talk about anti-core training, we talk about generating stiffness through the core. So the most basic example would be just a plank, right? Everybody knows what a plank looks and feels like. We're trying to squeeze as much as we can through the core so that there is no movement in the low back, right? The same would be said for like a side plank, or in the case of like an anti-rotation press where you're pressing a band out and then the band is pulling on one side and you're having to resist the twist, right? So you're having to keep yourself square. Those types of exercises are super, super important because they help us, like I said, generate stiffness through the core. What does generating stiffness through the core help us with? Helps us with transferring power from our lower body to our upper body. So if you think about trying to hit a baseball with a pool noodle, right? The pool noodle is really weak and flimsy. If you try to hit a baseball with a pool noodle, baseball's not going to go very far. The reason the baseball goes 400 feet is because the bat is stiff and the baseball player's core is stiff. And so when they rotate, the core transfers the energy from the lower body that they're creating up into their arms, into the bat, into the ball, and then out of the park. All right. Same thing applies for when we're going for takedowns or we're going for sweeps or any type of explosive movement, that involves us trying to move our opponent. You have to be stiff in the core in order for that to work. And so developing that stiffness through what we call anti-core movements is super, super important, regardless of the sport, but especially for jiu-jitsu athletes.
All right.
I should say there's one other thing I'd like to add to that, and that is I'm not saying that the core is not meant to move. The core is meant to move, and you should be mobile through the spine, right? It's I think a lot of times that statement or that explanation gets blown out of proportion. People are like, he's saying that the spine should not move. That's not the case. Spine should move, but when you're trying to create power, it's really important that it's stiff so that you can transfer the power from your lower body to your upper body. If you think about like a judo throw, right, where you're pulling somebody over your shoulder and you're having to twist really, really quickly. If your core is not stiff and your lower body goes and your upper body doesn't, nothing happens, right? You might hurt yourself. And so I just to clarify, so that people don't take this and blow it out of proportion, your spine should move. But when you're trying to execute athletic movements, especially those that involve moving your opponent in this case, generating stiffness through the core and thus the spine is really, really important.
And again, as I said, I'm learning something new each time I talk with you. And it all makes sense, especially, once you brought up the transferring of the energy. As you're mentioning, like, it has to be stiff. I was like, that makes sense, because essentially when you're swinging the bat, you're one with the bat at that point.
Yeah.
So it all kind of generates together. So
100%. Yep.
Makes sense.
That's it.
Right,
I love the pool noodle analogy. It's one of my favorites to give. People always are like, oh yeah, they're right. Actually, if I tried to hit a ball with a pool noodle, it wouldn't go anywhere. Yep. That's it. It's all stiffness. That's all it is.
Well, once you brought up the judo part, I was like, immediately it went through. And I was like, oh, I could already see how that could fail your body. Just, any little bit of judo that I have done is like, just like strong. You got to be like a good core. So in me at the time, no good core. It's like, oh my God, why does my back hurt? Like this fucking
your
side is
sides.
hurting.
Yeah.
It's like this sucks. I don't want to do judo anymore. Let me just go pull guard.
Well, like I said, there's plenty of anti-core stuff in the Move, Feel, Perform Better ebook, man. You're gonna love it. I know it. I can't wait to hear how you feel after you've gone through it. So
I just got it downloaded here onto the iPad, so waiting for it to populate, because things do weird things. I'll upload. Okay, there we go. Now we got it.
Cool.
So, Matt, thank you for doing this.
Thanks so much for having me.
You. Again, your patience with the time flubs and everything, I appreciate it, dude. I can't express how thankful I am for you. So thank you, and for sharing everything, all your information, and just like I said, I feel like each time I talk to you, I'm learning something new. So,
well, I appreciate that. I'm happy to share. Anytime you want me on, let me know. Happy to make time for it. I love teaching people this stuff. It's, like I said, it's my mission, man. I want to help change the way grapplers approach strength training. If one of your listeners takes one thing that I said today and does a little bit better, and they maybe avoid an injury that they would have sustained as a result of something that happened on the mats, that enables them to stay on the mats a little bit longer. That gets them a little bit better. That helps their training partners as well as them. And so that's my way of trying to reach the community in a really broad sense, is, just one grappler at a time, try to help them out. And that's the goal.
Excellent goal. Thank you for that. And before we get out of here, any shout outs or mentions you'd like to drop for us here?
Yeah. Go check out the Move, Feel, Perform Better ebook. It's on BJJ Fanatics and strongandfit.com. You can follow me at my personal Instagram is at matt.jits.hew. It's HEW at the end. And then our gym is at Victory High Performance. If you're in the San Jose area, come see us. We're right downtown, right at the corner of Race and Alameda. And if you want to set up a strategy session, you just go to www.victoryhighperformance.com.
All right, excellent. I'll be sure to put all the information in the show notes and throw those up on Instagram as well. And I want to just say here, I have no shame in pointing out when I look at things goofy and I'm just confused, but I think I'm right. So your Instagram name, I think when I was doing the original episode, I put on here featuring Matt Hugh, and I was like, that's interesting, Matthew Hugh. And then I was like, and then I saw your last name. I was like, oh my god, dude! Like, stop overthinking these things. Just let.
I was trying to be clever and make it a play on jitsu. You know, like people are like something jitsu, and I was like, well, jitsu kind of sounds like jitsu. My name is Matthew. You know, so I was trying to be funny. I don't know if it worked.
I think everyone else got it, but me. Like, because after the fact, I was like, jitsu. Oh, I see what you did there. So there, I admitted to everyone. I'm a little slow. It's okay.
All good.
And as always, to everyone out there listening, thank you for the support. Thank you just for being there. We're coming up on 3 years here. We're 2 episodes away.
Hey, so nice, man.
So, like I've been saying it on other episodes. I didn't think we were going to make it past 3 episodes. So to get to 3 years is mind blowing. So thank you everyone who supported the podcast. Thank you all who have been guests on the podcast. It's been really cool. So I appreciate everyone. If you all have any questions, concerns, criticisms, hey, if you want to be guests, reach out. Let me know. You can find me at bjj.wiki on Instagram. You can also find me at Off the Mats Podcast on Instagram. So I've been saying lately, you can hit me on the email offthemats2020@gmail.com. And then I also followed up with, sometimes I get emails and I get worried because I think they're scammers. So I think someone heard that they were poking at me and they sent the email that it looked like a scam, but it was somebody just fucking with me. So don't do that. Made me nervous. But thank you all the same. If y'all trying to get a hold of me, you can find me at the Instagram accounts. That's where I'm mostly going to see messages. I want to give a big shout out to my crew over there at Nerd Rage Radio, Bobby, Chris, Joe, Marilyn, Phil, Ricky, Ticky, all you fellas. Thank you for everything you guys do. Without Nerd Rage Radio, I would not be doing Off the Mats podcast. I'd just be on Nerd Rage Radio once a month. So thank you to those fellas over there. I also want to give a shout out to my other podcast. So you like horror? If you like scary movies, horror films, go check it out. We are about to drop the 1980s horror episode. So go check it out. We're talking about a lot of the cool goofiness that comes from the 80s and horror and the impact that it has on horror even up to this day and practical effects and everything. It's a really fun episode with Marilyn, Phil, and Joe from Nerd Rage Radio. So go check that out. And just enjoy yourselves. Otherwise, thank you again. I love you all. You all have been great. You guys keep listening to this show, and we're gonna try to make it to year 4. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.
Deep with it. Now let me sing a song.